What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be chatting with Shawn Coleman from Locked On Grizzlies as the Grizzlies and Minnesota Timberwolves are knotted up at 2 games apiece. What do the Memphis Grizzlies have to do to take control of the series and win this pivotal Game 5 at home? How concerning is the offensive production from Ja Morant? But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because when it comes to protein bars, you've got to check out Built Bar. They're the #1 protein bar on the market. They've got so many incredible flavors to choose from: raspberry, strawberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, peanut butter, you name it, they probably have it as a flavor. Every single bar is coated in 100% delicious chocolate. They're all low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back, maybe just lose a little bit of weight. You can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Joining us now is Shawn Coleman from Locked On Grizzlies, the Locked On host on the network that leads the network in wholesomeness per 36 minutes. Shawn, this series now between the Grizzlies and Timberwolves knotted up 2 games apiece. And we have to start with the, albeit we're going to call them officiating woes from Game 4. After the game, Taylor Jenkins going so far as to say he had never seen a more inconsistent and arrogantly officiated game, saying that he could take whatever hit is coming his way, whatever fine. How difficult was it for the Grizzlies to try and find any semblance of rhythm or flow in this game with the whistle being blown like every other play?
And Jackson, first off, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be with you. But you hit the nail on the head. I mean, at the end of the day, the officiating in this series has impacted both teams. You're looking at 210 total fouls that have been called, and there's actually been 12 more fouls called on the Timberwolves than the Grizzlies. But the Grizzlies, just to be honest, the offensive upside of the Grizzlies when it comes to their top tier talent is not to the level that the Timberwolves is. That's a compliment to the Timberwolves more than it is, an indictment on the Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies do have to get into that rhythm. And especially for players like a Jaren Jackson Jr., a DeAnthony Melton off the bench, even Dillon Brooks and others, that rhythm starts with being able to get in the flow of the offense early. And when you get those 4, 5, 6 possessions in a row you typically are used to, you're able to get in that groove. Well, when you're not able to do that, it's hard to do. But it's not just that it impacts the offense. It also impacts the defense. When you have so many fouls, I believe that each starter last night had 2 fouls by the end of the fourth quarter, you're not able to be as aggressive. You're not able to be as effective. In your mind, you're thinking, what am I doing that's not going to get a foul called? And it makes you less effective. And that obviously helped the Timberwolves find the ball movement to make 18 threes. So it's a very unfortunate ripple effect. Last night it led to 15 extra free throw attempts, 12 extra free throws was the difference in the game. The reffing wasn't the main reason that we lost, but the ripple effect from it does impact the Grizzlies in multiple ways on both ends of the court. And you just hope that it doesn't get to that level again this series.
Speaking from a defensive standpoint, who has been the bigger headache matchup-wise so far in this series for the Grizzlies? Has it been Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony-Towns, and why?
I think that it certainly is Anthony Edwards. And the reason why that is because of the fact that even when the Grizzlies have been able to somewhat contain him, he still is making tough shots. I mean, in Game 1, we talk about the fact you don't want to have Steven Adams on an island against Anthony Edwards, but he still is winding up taking long twos, but making them. I do think that Anthony Edwards is the tougher overall matchup to limit or contain. But the difference maker is Karl Anthony-Towns. There is no shock that the 2 games that the Timberwolves have won this series so far is when they made 15+ threes to couple with Karl Anthony-Towns going for 30 or more. So at the end of the day, Anthony Edwards is the tougher matchup, the one that the Grizzlies are going to have to pay closer attention to, but they cannot let Karl Anthony-Towns' driving ability become a big factor either.
Offensively, Ja Morant has, while he's been wheeling and dealing this series for certain, offensively just doesn't quite look like the Ja Morant that we've all kind of come to know and love at this point. And his offensive totals have just slowly dwindled as the series has gone on. Started off with 32 points, then 23, then 16, then just 11 points in this most recent game. After the game said, he's not playing like Ja. He said he just doesn't have the same, explosiveness, same lift, not playing above the rim, essentially. Has that been a part, in part due to the Timberwolves defensive scheme on him, or is that more so just because he's not at 100% right now physically, do you think?
I'll make the case all season long that the team in the NBA that's done the best job of limiting Ja Morant is the Timberwolves. 4 games during the season, regular season, he averaged 20 points per game, 40% shooting, 3 of 20 total from three. 4 games so far in the playoffs, 20 and a half points per game, 40% shooting, 27% from three. That's the top layer. The Timberwolves guard him basically better than anybody in the NBA. But there's also the legs of Ja Morant. He's coming off that knee injury that held him out for the last 2 weeks of the season. He's also got hit in the thigh, in the quad, what have you. I do think his legs just are a bit heavy right now. And so, one big thing that's going to factor into games 5 and 6, and I'm thankful for, is that one extra day of rest. We get 2 full days of rest between game 5 and game 6. And I think that will let him at least get as close to Ja as he can be. But without a doubt, yes, the same spring, the same energy, the same explosiveness is certainly missing to go along with a team that guards him very well.
Who has quietly, Shawn, been maybe the X factor for the Grizzlies so far across these 4 games? And that could be a positive X factor or a negative X factor, maybe potentially contributing to a couple of these losses as well.
I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple out there. Brandon Clark obviously has been, Brandon Clark's known. I'll actually go Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones has been a very, very solid contributor for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies since game 1 have really been able to match the Timberwolves when it comes to shooting the three. Obviously, Desmond Bane has been huge on that. He's made 19 of 39 over the past 3 games, but Tyus Jones, 7 of 11 himself, hitting big shots late in the game in game 3 to help us get the win. So in a positive light, it's actually been Tyus Jones. In a negative light, it's his bench backcourt mate in DeAnthony Melton, someone who's 3 of 18. But I will say this, I would not go away from Melton because he is a double whammy for Minnesota if he gets going. His shooting surges help the Grizzlies have another source from 3. His ability to create turnovers really could play a factor in an aspect of this series. It's really helping out the Grizzlies, forcing Minnesota into a lot of turnovers. So Tyus Jones so far has been one of the more not talked about X factors compared to others. DeAnthony Melton, though, I think will be a factor at some point in this series.
With the Grizzlies here, Shawn, they've had a few different starting lineups across this series. They've had Steven Adams. They've had even Brandon Clark starting, the second half of one of these games. They've had Kyle Anderson. They've had Xavier Tillman. They've tried a few different looks, and Taylor Jenkins just try. What is he looking for with rotating these different guys into the starting lineup? What is he trying to find, and who do you think has fared best out of some of these different variations as the fifth starter for the Grizzlies?
He's trying to find the right combination of intelligence and physicality, I feel. That's what you're getting when you've got a Karl Anderson and Xavier Tillman guarding against Karl Anthony-Towns. Xavier Tillman can be the physical presence there to make it harder for Karl Anthony-Towns to work or stay consistent throughout the game. And then, of course, Kyle Anderson has the intelligence, the intuition to be able to, basically hopefully outthink Karl Anthony-Towns when it comes to playing defense. You've got Jaren helping out as well. But, of course, you don't want Jaren to stay on Karl Anthony-Towns to avoid foul trouble. I think that with Taylor Jenkins, it's just throwing different looks at the combinations. We talk all the time about how teams in the playoffs want to throw different bodies at the better perimeter scorers in the league to keep them off balance. Well, for the Grizzlies right now, it's finding among that trio, or with Brandon Clark as well, what's the best combination to limit Towns? And I think starting with the intelligence first of Kyle Anderson to kind of keep Karl Anthony-Towns out of rhythm, and then coming and frustrating him with physicality with Xavier Tillman. Since Steven Adams is not an option, I think that's the right combination, starting with Kyle and then entering Xavier Tillman as time goes on.
Shawn, what do you view as the number one area of concern that the Grizzlies need to address heading into the all-important Game 5 of this series?
Jaren Jackson Jr. It absolutely is Jaren Jackson Jr. We've got to be able to have it, there are factors that are outside of our control. The Grizzlies cannot control whether the refs are going to make it more than a desired impact on the games or not. But Jaren Jackson Jr., for one, has to stay on the floor. For two, he has to stay composed. And for three, he's going to have to start finding a way to contribute offensively. Only 37% from the floor, especially with Ja Morant, who's a bit limited, but still is making an impact with his passing. Jaren's got to find some way to do it. grabbing offensive rebounds, getting in the lane to balance out the three-point attack with twos, what have you. He's going to have to find some way outside of defense to contribute on offense. So it certainly is a point of concern so far. Will it get itself figured out? We have to hope so. But I do think that that is a huge area of, opportunity for the Grizzlies, is that if Jaren Jackson Jr. can get going, that can really help us out. It's no coincidence his best game was coupled with the blowout for us in game 2.
Can the Grizzlies swing this series in their favor at home against the Timberwolves at FedEx Forum? Of course, Shawn, you'll have us covered for all of this and more playoffs coverage over at Locked On Grizzlies. As always, appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Jackson, have a great one, sir.